Husband never let me handle our finances. Not once in 4 years of marriage. He said it with a smile every time I asked. You don't need to worry about that, sweetheart. That's my job. And I believed him because he was an accountant, because he was meticulous about everything. The way he folded his shirts, the way he sorted the mail, the way he paid every bill exactly 3 days before it was due. I thought his need to manage our money was just another expression of that same careful, orderly mind. I thought a lot of things about my husband that turned out to be wrong. His name is Nathan. We met when I was 26 at a friend's birthday party in Austin. He was the kind of man who remembered your drink order after one conversation and actually brought it to you without being asked. He was attentive in a way that felt rare. We dated for 2 years, got married in a small ceremony at a vineyard outside the city, and moved into a house in a quiet suburb where the neighbors waved from their driveways, and the elementary school was 4 blocks away. We talked about having kids. We talked about it a lot. He wanted to. I wanted to. We agreed on everything, or at least I thought we did. The only thing we ever disagreed about was money, and even calling it a disagreement feels too generous. It was more like a door that was always locked. I would reach for the handle, and he would gently redirect me, and after a while, I stopped reaching. I had my own account for personal spending. He covered everything else: mortgage, utilities, groceries, insurance. I never saw a statement. I never logged into a joint account because there wasn't one. He said it was simpler that way. He said he had a system. I was 31 when everything fell apart. It started with a FedEx package. Nathan had been at a conference in Dallas for 4 days. He traveled for work sometimes. Nothing unusual. I was home alone, working remotely, feeding the cat, living my quiet, ordinary life. The FedEx driver rang the doorbell on a Tuesday afternoon and left a package on the porch that required a signature. I signed for it without thinking. It was addressed to Nathan. Return address listed a law firm I didn't recognize. Alderman and Bright LLC, out of Phoenix, Arizona. I set it on the kitchen counter. I made myself a cup of coffee. I stared at it for a long time. I want to be honest about what I did next because I've turned it over in my mind 1,000 times since. I opened it. I know some people would say I shouldn't have. I know the argument about privacy, even between spouses. But something had been sitting wrong in my chest for weeks, a low hum of unease I couldn't name. And when I saw that package, I felt it get louder. So I opened it. Inside was a thick document. A trust agreement. Nathan's name was listed as the primary grantor. The beneficiary was someone named Elliot Marcus Webb, age 9. The document outlined the transfer of assets into a fund managed by Alderman and Bright for the benefit of this child, to be administered until he turned 25. The trust had been established 7 years ago. It had been funded annually since then. I sat down on the kitchen floor. Not because my legs gave out. I just suddenly needed to be lower to the ground. 7 years ago, Nathan and I had been dating for 6 months. I put the document back in the envelope. I put the envelope on the counter. I went into the bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed and thought about all the times I had asked to see our finances, and he had said, "You don't need to worry about that, sweetheart." I thought about the business trips: Dallas, Chicago, Phoenix. I pulled up Nathan's email on our shared laptop. We'd shared a password for years, the kind of small domestic thing that stops feeling significant. I told myself I was going to find one explanation, and it was going to be something simple. Something I could laugh about later. An old family obligation, a nephew I'd never heard of. Something. What I found instead was a folder he'd labeled W and nested inside 3 other folders so that it wouldn't appear in a basic search. Inside were 5 years of emails from a woman named Serena Webb. The earliest ones were businesslike, updates on the child, medical appointments, school enrollment forms. The recent ones were not businesslike at all. I read every email. I don't know how long it took. At some point the room got dark and I hadn't turned on any lights. The picture that assembled itself was this. Nathan had a son with Serena Webb, who lived in Scottsdale, Arizona. The boy's name was Elliot. He was 9 years old. He had been conceived during the period Nathan and I were dating. Before we were exclusive, Nathan would probably argue. Though that argument dies when you look at the timeline and realize I had already met his mother by then, already been introduced as the girlfriend, already started believing in a future with this man. Nathan had been sending money every month. A lot of money. The kind of money that explained, suddenly, a dozen small financial mysteries. Why we didn't have more savings. Why he pushed back when I suggested reopen a joint investment account. Why every conversation about our financial picture came with a gentle pivot and a reassurance and a subject change. And Serena had been patient for years. But her most recent emails weren't patient. Elliot had been diagnosed with a kidney condition. Something chronic, progressive, serious. He needed a transplant eventually, maybe not now, but soon. She had been tested, she wasn't a match. She was asking Nathan to get tested. She was not asking kindly anymore. I found a draft email that Nathan had never sent. It was addressed to Serena. It said, "I can't get tested without her finding out. Give me more time." Her. That was me. I was the her who wasn't supposed to find out. Nathan came home the next evening. He texted from the airport that he'd landed. He was exhausted. He'd pick up Thai food on the way. He came through the door with takeout bags and his rolling suitcase and a smile that I now understand was the smile of someone who had been maintaining a secret for so long that the maintenance had become instinct. He didn't look guilty. He looked like a man coming home from a work trip. I was sitting at the kitchen table. The FedEx envelope was in front of me. His laptop was open next to it, the email folder on the screen. He saw it and stopped walking. I watched something move through his face, not guilt first, not panic first, but a kind of calculation. He was thinking, even in that moment, he was thinking about his next move. "Sit down," I said. He sat down. I'm not going to recount the full conversation because some of it was ugly and some of it was him talking in circles, and I've spent enough time living inside those hours. The essential things he said, he had been young. He hadn't known what to do. He hadn't wanted to lose me. He had been handling it. He had thought he could keep it separate. He loved me. He was sorry. He was so sorry. He was so sorry. He did not say, "I should have told you." Not once did he say that simple thing. I asked about Elliot. I asked about the kidney condition. I watched his face do the calculation again and I felt something go cold in me because I realized, sitting there, that he was deciding how much to tell me based on what he thought I could be managed into accepting. He wasn't confessing. He was negotiating. "How bad is it?" I asked. He said Elliot was stable for now. He said they were monitoring it. He said there was time. I asked if he'd been tested as a potential donor. He said no. I asked him why not. He said it was complicated. I asked him why not. He said it was complicated. I asked him what that meant. He looked at the table. He said that getting tested would require going through the hospital system, which would generate paperwork, which might, in his words, raise questions. I understood then what he was actually afraid of, not the exposure of the affair, not the end of our marriage. He was afraid that if I found out about Elliot, I would leave, and if I left, I would take my own income and my own potential legal claims, and the careful financial architecture he had constructed would shift. He had been keeping me in the dark, not only to protect his secret, but because my ignorance was structurally useful to him. I picked up my keys and my purse and I left the house. I drove to my sister's place across town. She opened the door and looked at my face and didn't ask any questions, just pulled me inside and made tea. I sat at her kitchen table and told her everything. When I was done, she was quiet for a moment, and then she said, "You need a lawyer before you go back there." She was right. I called a family law attorney the next morning. Her name was Patricia Holt, and she'd been practicing in Travis County for 20 years, and she had a way of listening that made you feel like your situation was being held carefully, not being processed. I brought the FedEx envelope. I had screenshots of the emails. She went through everything methodically, asking questions, taking notes. She told me several things I needed to hear in that order. First, the trust fund Nathan had established was a legal obligation to his son, and his handling of it was not fraudulent in itself. Second, the concealment of a child and the diversion of marital assets to fund that child's support, without my knowledge, was absolutely relevant to any divorce proceeding. Third, he had no legal right to make decisions that affected our joint financial position without my knowledge or consent, regardless of whose name the accounts were in. Fourth, I needed to get a full picture of our finances before he had any reason to think I was doing so. She connected me with a forensic accountant. I spent the next 2 weeks in a kind of focused, quiet shock, going to work, coming home to my sister's guest room, and meeting with the forensic accountant on Tuesday and Thursday afternoons. What she found was not criminal, but it was extensive. Nathan had kept our household expenses artificially low for years by underreporting what he called our discretionary spending in conversations with me, while routing the difference into Elliot's trust. It wasn't embezzlement in a legal sense, but it was a form of financial control I hadn't even known to look for because I hadn't known the category existed. Through Patricia, I learned that Nathan had finally gotten tested as a kidney donor. He was a partial match for Elliot. Not ideal, but possible. The Phoenix medical team wanted to move forward. And Serena, according to a letter Patricia obtained through preliminary proceedings, had recently filed a petition of her own in Maricopa County Family Court, seeking formal recognition of Nathan's paternity and a revised support arrangement because she had grown tired of informal agreements. She had been tired for a while, it turned out. She had been patient, and then she had been less patient, and now she was done. I met Serena once. Not because I planned to. Patricia had advised me to let the attorneys handle all contact, which was correct and reasonable, and I had followed that advice. But there was a scheduling mix-up at the family court building downtown. Our hearing and a related proceeding in the Maricopa case were being coordinated, and there was a moment in the hallway where we simply saw each other. She was tall, composed, tired-looking in the way of someone who has been managing something hard for a long time. She had her son with her, Elliot. He was small for 9, with dark eyes and a seriousness about his face that children shouldn't have to carry. He was looking at his shoes. I don't know what Serena saw when she looked at me. I know what I saw when I looked at her. Someone else who had been managed. Someone else who had been given a partial truth and asked to make do with it. We had more in common than Nathan would have ever been comfortable admitting. We didn't speak. We nodded at each other, that was all. Nathan and I were separated within the month. He moved into an apartment. I stayed in the house while the proceedings sorted out what belonged to whom. He hired his own attorney. There was a period of negotiation that Patricia navigated with a steadiness I was grateful for every single day. During that time, my mother-in-law called me. Nathan's mother, a woman named Judith I had always liked, who sent birthday cards with handwritten notes and made a brisket every Christmas that was genuinely the best thing I had ever eaten. She called me from her landline in Corpus Christi, which she always used because she didn't trust cell phones, and she cried almost immediately. She said she had known, not about Elliot's illness, not about the trust, not about the financial arrangement, but about Serena. She had known there had been someone, briefly, before Nathan and I were engaged. Nathan had told her. He had asked her not to tell me. She'd agreed and then spent 4 years feeling terrible about it and not knowing what to do. I sat with that for a long time. I still sit with it sometimes. I asked her why she hadn't told me. She said she had believed Nathan when he said it was over and it didn't matter, and I would only be hurt by knowing. She said she had made the wrong call. She said she was sorry in a way that sounded like it came from somewhere real. I told her I didn't blame her. I mostly meant it. The divorce was finalized 8 months after I found that FedEx package. The settlement included an equitable division of assets that accounted for the years of diverted funds. Not everything I might have theoretically claimed, but enough to feel fair, which is a different calculation than feeling like justice. Nathan's support obligation to Elliot was formalized through the Maricopa court. He proceeded with the donor evaluation. I don't know the full outcome of Elliot's medical situation. That's not my information to have. What I do know, I moved into a smaller place on the east side of Austin, close to a coffee shop where I go on Sunday mornings and sit by the window and read. I got a cat, or rather, I kept the cat, because Nathan had been allergic and we'd gotten her anyway when I insisted, and she had always been more mine than his. Her name is Fig. She sleeps on my feet. I'm not going to tell you I came out of this hole. I came out of it changed, which is not the same thing. I spent a long time asking myself why I had accepted so little access to our own life together. Why I had let "you don't need to worry about that" become a full answer. The truth is that when someone you love tells you something in a confident, reassuring tone, and when that reassurance is comfortable, it is very easy to let it be enough. It is not weakness, it's trust. The problem was that my trust was placed in someone who was using it as a tool. There's one more thing I want to say about Elliot. He is 9 years old. He did not choose any of this. He did not choose his father's choices, or his mother's patience and then her legal action, or the fact that the first time he appeared in my life, he was standing in a courthouse hallway looking at his shoes. He is a child who is sick and who needs his father to show up, and from everything I understand through the court proceedings, Nathan has begun to do that. Not perfectly, not completely, but more than he was doing before everything came apart. I think about the half-siblings question sometimes, the one that would have no clean answer even if I had children, which I don't. I think about what Serena might tell Elliot someday about why things are the way they are. I hope she finds words that are honest without being cruel, because that's a hard needle to thread and she deserves credit for having to thread it at all. For a long time after the divorce, people kept asking me if I was angry. The honest answer is yes, but not at the frequency or volume they seemed to expect. The anger I felt was cleaner than I expected, and it burned out faster than I expected, and what it left behind was something more like clarity. A knowledge of my own outline, a sense of what I will and won't accept that I didn't have at 26, standing at a birthday party, watching a man bring me a drink I hadn't asked for, and thinking, this one is different. He was different. Just not in the way I thought. I still drink the same thing though, gin and tonic, extra lime. Some things don't need to change. I've thought a lot about the word trust since all of this happened. Not in a dramatic way, not the way people talk about it in movies, where someone slams a door and says, I don't know if I can ever trust again, and the camera cuts away. I mean the quiet, everyday version of it. The way trust shows up in small decisions. The decision to let someone else hold information that affects your own life. The decision to accept a reassurance without asking what's underneath it. I made that decision over and over for 4 years. And I don't say that to punish myself. I've moved past the self-blame. Mostly. But I say it because I think it's the honest part. Nathan didn't take something from me by force. I handed it over, a little at a time, because handing it over was comfortable and questioning it wasn't. There's a cause and effect chain in this story that I can trace clearly now, even if I couldn't see it while I was inside it. Nathan made a choice early, to conceal Elliot, to conceal Serena, to construct a version of our life that was financially manageable for him and informationally controlled. That choice required maintenance. Every month, every conversation about money, every gentle redirect. Those were the cost of keeping that first choice hidden. And the longer it went, the more the architecture depended on my not looking too closely. He needed me comfortable. He needed me trusting. My trust wasn't incidental to his secret. It was load-bearing. That's the part that took me longest to name, because once I named it, I had to sit with the fact that the quality I'd always considered one of my better ones, the willingness to believe people I love, had been the precise thing someone used against me. That's a strange thing to reckon with. It didn't make me want to become suspicious or closed, but it did make me understand that trust has to come with access, not because you're paranoid, but because real partnership means you're both allowed to see the whole picture. If someone loves you and also consistently keeps you from information that affects your life, those two things are in conflict. Eventually you have to decide which one you believe. Elliot didn't do anything wrong. I come back to that often. He's 9, and he's sick. And he deserved a father who showed up without needing a courthouse to make it happen. The fact that Nathan is starting to show up now, imperfectly, incompletely, is something. But it's also the direct consequence of everything collapsing. He didn't choose accountability. He arrived at it because there was no longer anywhere to hide. That's what I mean by cause and effect, not punishment from some external force, just the natural weight of accumulated choices pressing down until the structure gives. The FedEx package, the laptop, the email folder labeled W, none of that was fate. It was just information that had always existed, finally arriving in a room I was sitting in. I kept the cat. I kept my apartment on the east side. I kept my Sunday mornings of the coffee shop window. Small things, but they're mine in a way that my marriage, in retrospect, never fully was. That's not a sad ending. That's just what it looks like when you finally start from honest ground.